Welcome back. It's time for another edition of the Thumb Coast TV Get Stuck on Sports TV edition. I'm Dennis Stuckey, your host. Lots to cover here on the program today because the high school hockey playoffs start this week and the boys basketball playoffs will start next week. So we're winding down the regular season for the boys this week, and the girls have just 2 weeks left in their season before they start playing playoff games as well. And there's still a couple of races out there that are left to be decided. Both are in the Blue Water Area Conference. As we always do, we'll start with the ladies first. And I want to run down what some of the teams have been doing of late. Port Huron High had an interesting week last week because they won another game that maybe people in the MAC Red at least didn't think they would, and that is they beat Dakota 54-50, and that means they swept both games from Dakota this year. That doesn't happen to the Cougars very often, that somebody in the red beats them twice in the same season. But PH did that, but they followed it up, though, with a loss to Eisenhower and then a non-league loss to Yale. They were competitive in the first half against Yale, and in fact got off to a great start and were in the lead early in that game. They jumped out to a 7-1 lead, but they eventually ended up falling 48-38 to the Lady Bulldogs, who continue to play really well. It was an interesting week for Port Huron Northern. They split a pair of games, losing by 6 points to Chippewa Valley, but then turning around and absolutely blowing out Southlake 54-18. So the Lady Huskies got a split last week. Marysville also ended up with a split. However, they had a big loss against Fraser to start the week and then bounced back with a win in a game that they were expected to win against Chippewa Valley. The split, though, left them still a game and a half back in the MAC Blue, and they're running out of time, and basically they need to win out, and somewhere along the road they need Fraser to lose 2 of their remaining 3 games. So while mathematically Marysville's still alive in the Blue Chase, it's probably not going to happen for the Lady Vikings. St. Clair, however, deserves full congratulations because they had 2 wins. The first one over Roseville clinched no worse than a share of the MAC Gold title. And then when they beat Lakeshore 50-18, 2 days later, they became the undisputed MAC Gold champs. Their game this week against L'Anse Creuse doesn't matter. Win or lose, they are the undisputed MAC Gold champions, the Lady Saints. Marine City with a couple of wins. They beat Fitzgerald in overtime to start the week, and then they closed out the week with a win over Roseville. So 2 nice wins for the Lady Mariners. It's been a struggle for them to score, but they put up 52 against Fitz, and they held Roseville to 21 points. Defense has been the strong point for the Lady Mariners. We mentioned Yale and Armada is the race in the BWAC. There's a game separating the 2 teams. There's 2 games left in the regular season. They'll both play this week, and then they'll meet next week on the 24th, basically for the league championship, as long as neither team stubs its toe later this week when they play games. But Yale will play at Croslex. It's not an easy game. Even though Yale is rolling right now. They've won 9 in a row, and they've only lost 1 game all season, and they're 12-0 in league play. They still have to go to Croslex. That's a tough game. Armada has to go to North Branch. North Branch really hasn't been playing well of late, so while a couple of weeks ago I would have called this a difficult game, Armada should be able to go to North Branch, take care of business. Assuming Yale takes care of business in their game at Croslex, then the game next week would be Yale is the outright champs with a win, and Armada would get a tie for the league championship with Yale if they won next week. And in fact, even if both teams win or lose their game later this week, that would at least clinch a share of the title for Yale at this point. Armada just beat Algonac and Richmond. Yale last week beat North Branch, and they went into Emily City and got a nice win. But I'm going to talk about a player for the Spartans in that one because Alexis Briere hit 8 3-pointers in the loss and finished with 36 of her team's 50 points. And she was the only reason that Imlay City was even anywhere in this game, although Yale was pretty dominant throughout. They had this thing wrapped up at halftime and then just kind of coasted from there. But another impressive win, but a great outing from Briere for the Imlay City Spartans. Croslex, I'm going to throw them in there because they had a good week. They beat Imlay City. They beat Algonac. And then they closed out. They were busy. They closed out the week against a really good Kingston team. They lost that one. Actually, Kingston took it to them pretty badly. But the 2 league wins were nice for the Lady Pioneers because they've been struggling of late. Numbers, again, have been an issue for them. And in games that I've seen, they've kind of run out of gas at the end. But not last week, as they took 2 out of 3 games. So that's what's going on with the ladies. For the guys, Port Huron Northern had a chance to get a share of the MAC Red title, but that ended when they lost to Chippewa Valley 65-64. Ends up, it didn't matter anyways because Dakota won their game and they needed Dakota to lose and Northern needed to win, and what happened was just the opposite. Dakota won and Northern lost. So Dakota ends up winning the MAC Red outright, and Northern finishes in a 3-way tie for second place with Chippewa Valley and also with Roseville in the red. So that didn't happen. PH suffered a couple of losses. They've really, record-wise, they've struggled down the stretch here. They play hard. I like their style. I like where they're going. It's a young team. They're bringing back a lot for next year. It's probably going to be a decent year for them next year, and they'll have a chance. But this year, they're kind of out of it. They only played 1 game last week, and they lost to Lakeview in that game, 56-45. But as PH is winding down and looking ahead to the district playoffs, they're really not, record-wise, doing as well as I thought they would by this point of the season. Marysville got a loss to Lakeview, but bounced back with a win over Southlake. That meant Marine City to stay ahead of Marysville in the standings in the MAC Silver. Needed to pick up a couple of wins, and they did just that. They started the week poorly, losing to Imlay City 82-60. They gave up a lot of points in that one. Then they turned around. They played a really tight ball game with Armada. At Armada, ended up losing 54-50, but that was a really good basketball game that they had a chance to win. But they didn't let any of that affect them because a game that they weren't supposed to win against East Point, they ended up winning 52-41, and that win put them in 3rd place in the silver, knocked East Point into 2nd place, and allowed New Haven to win the silver outright. So New Haven ends up winning the silver when it looked like that New Haven and East Point were going to end up tied for that league championship because I don't think anybody was expecting Marine City to actually beat East Point in that game, but they did. Croslex is the leader in the BWAC. They only had 1 league game during the week, and they blew Algonac out to make sure that they were still a game ahead of Yale in the standings. They also played Harbor Beach later in the week, lost that game 58-44, but however, Yale only played 1 game all week. That was against Imlay City on Friday, and they went into Imlay City and they just played a great game. Won 75-45 over the Spartans, and again, were pretty much in control of that basketball game right from the get-go, and they won it rather easily at Imlay City. So Croslex and Yale meet on later this week on Friday, and that one is to decide whether we're going to have 1 champ in the BWAC or 2 champs in the BWAC. Croslex has the 1-game lead, so obviously if they win that game Friday, they're the undisputed champs. But if Yale were to win the game Friday at Croslex, then those 2 teams would be tied. And oh, by the way, there's a real good chance that they'll meet for a 3rd time this season, once the district playoffs begin. That will start next Monday. You've got at Dakota in Division I. Port Huron High will open against L'Anse Creuse. The winner of that game will play Dakota next Wednesday, a week from this Wednesday. Anchor Bay and L'Anse Creuse North are the other opening round game, with the winner facing Port Huron Northern a week from Wednesday. Over at Yale in Division II, only one game on Monday night. Elmont takes on North Branch, with the winner facing Yale. The other semifinal is already set between Croslex and Imlay City. And again, if both Yale and Croslex win their semifinal games, they'll play for a third time this season. And this one will be for a district championship, which is probably a little more important even than a league title to those two teams. All right, over at Marine City is our other Division II district for boys basketball. Monday, Marine City will play Richmond, and the winner will get St. Clair, who's probably the favorite in this district, in my opinion. And Marysville will play Algonac, with the winner taking on Armada. So that's the other games are fairly interesting. Marine City, Richmond, that's a fairly even match. They played in the regular season, and Richmond won that game by 2 points, 50-48. So that could be a really good game. Marysville should take care of business with Algonac, and then the Marysville-Armada game should be really interesting because Armada has really played well down the stretch. They're actually playing their best basketball right now. So that will be an interesting game. Because again, a month ago I would have said, oh, Marysville is the favorite to me against Armada. Now I would call that a 50-50 game at worst. All right, just elsewhere real quick. Over in Brown City, Marlette and Landmark are the Monday game. Over at Centerline Prep, Mount Clemens will play Memphis on Monday. At Flint Beecher, Beecher plays Peck. Dryden plays Mayville. Those games are Monday. Cardinal Mooney is hosting a district. The first game is Pontiac Excellence going up against Austin Catholic. Then New Haven Merit plays Parkway Christian. Mooney gets the winner of the Austin Catholic Pontiac Excellent game. It should be a Mooney Parkway Christian final, and Mooney should win that district. As far as I'm concerned there. And one other district that I wanted to mention is at Akron Fairgrove. CPS and Akron Fairgrove play in the first game. The winner gets Ubley, and North Huron plays Caseville in the second game. Deckerville awaits the winner of that game. So the boys' playoffs start on Monday, and that first round goes really fast, and we go from having about 30 area teams in to usually only having under 10 left for the next round of the playoffs. And speaking of the regionals, because that is the next round of the boys' playoffs, regionals is where hockey starts, and the action is hot and heavy this week, and it starts with Port Huron Northern taking on L'Anse Creuse Unified. That game is a Tuesday night game at St. Clair Shores in Division II. If Northern wins, they would play Rochester Adams on Friday. And also on Friday in that same regional, Thumb Legion would be going up against St. Clair Shores Unified. And so there is a possibility, if they both won this week, that Northern and Thumb Legion could play for a regional title. Won't be easy, though, because St. Clair Shores will probably be the slight favorite over Thumb Legion, even though they're technically the higher seed in this format. And Northern, that would be two pretty good wins for the Huskies if they could get them. They lost last week to L'Anse Creuse Unified 3-1, so they were competitive with them, but still have some work to do. And then obviously Rochester Adams would be the favorite against the Huskies later in the week. But last year it was a 1-0 game, so it's not out of the question. PH and Anchor Bay play each other right off the hop, so one of them is getting knocked out in the first game, and the other will play Eisenhower, who's the number one seed in that D1 regional over at Suburban Ice Arena. And Marysville goes to Cranbrook for their regional. They should win their opener. They get Grosse Pointe North. They'll be the heavy favorite. They beat the Norsemen twice already this year by a combined score of 15-3. Expect them to win that one, but then Friday they'd have to play the host team, Cranbrook, in the semifinal. The other side of that bracket has De La Salle and Grosse Pointe Liggett. So that's what's going on in the area. Thanks for watching. This has been another Thumb Coast TV Get Stuck on Sports edition. I'm Dennis Stuckey.